Inside the pediatric wing of a New York hospital, the day had started like any other. Nurses shuffled between rooms, doctors discussed treatment plans in hushed tones, and parents sat at bedsides, holding their children's hands through the tough moments. But then, something unexpected happened. The double doors at the entrance swung open, and in walked Barron Trump, unannounced and without the usual media spectacle. The staff exchanged glances, unsure what to expect. He wasn't surrounded by the kind of entourage you might think. Instead, it was just Barron and a small group, including a hospital representative who had coordinated the visit in complete secrecy. The young Trump carried himself with a calm presence, his towering frame surprisingly approachable as he smiled at the curious faces staring back at him. One of the first patients Barron met was Lily, a 9-year-old undergoing her third round of chemotherapy. Her energy had been drained from months of treatment, and her once vibrant smile had faded. But when Barron sat beside her and asked about her favorite animals, something incredible happened. Her eyes brightened as she began to describe her love for dolphins, her voice stronger than it had been all week. Lily's mom, seated nearby, was caught off guard when Barron reached into his bag and handed Lily a small stuffed dolphin he had brought with him. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was one that felt deeply personal. Lily clutched the toy like it was the most precious thing in the world, and for a moment, the worry in her mother's eyes seemed to soften. In another room, Barron met Alex, a 14-year-old aspiring basketball player sidelined by a rare blood disorder. Alex, who had grown quiet and withdrawn since his diagnosis, opened up when Barron asked about his favorite NBA team. For the next few minutes, they talked hoops like old friends, the laughter spilling into the hallway and drawing smiles from nearby nurses. A nurse later remarked that the visit wasn't just about Barron's presence, it was the way he listened, as if each child's story was the only thing that mattered in that moment. Even the medical staff were moved by how genuine he seemed, a sentiment echoed by a doctor who said, "It's rare to see someone his age step into an environment like this and connect so effortlessly." By the time Barron left, he had visited nearly every child in the wing, leaving behind not just gifts, but a sense of hope. For families enduring some of the hardest days of their lives, it was a reminder that they weren't forgotten, even by someone who could have easily stayed away. What stood out the most? It wasn't the gifts, or even the surprise of his visit, it was the kindness and humility he showed in every interaction. Moments like these don't make headlines often, but for the people in that hospital, they became unforgettable. It was a typical morning at St. Hope's Children's Hospital. Nurses moved quietly through the hallways, checking on patients and exchanging updates. In the common area, a few kids sat with their parents, flipping through books or watching cartoons, trying to pass the time. For these families, life had become a rhythm of treatments, medications, and moments of waiting for good news, waiting for progress, waiting for a little relief. The children at St. Hope's were fighting some of the toughest battles: cancer, genetic disorders, and conditions that required constant care. For many, the hospital had become a second home, a place where birthdays, milestones, and sometimes even holidays happened. For parents, the weight of uncertainty was constant, written on their faces as they sat by bedsides, hoping for a breakthrough. Amid this quiet routine, a message had circulated among the hospital staff: a special visitor was coming. No one told the kids, partly because they wanted it to be a surprise, and partly because they couldn't be sure how it would unfold. When Barron Trump walked through the main entrance, even some of the staff were caught off guard. They'd heard he might visit, but seeing him there, tall, reserved, and holding a bag filled with carefully chosen gifts, made it real. Barron had specifically requested to meet the children without any press or public announcement. He wanted the focus to be on them, not on him. This wasn't about a photo opportunity, it was about connection. One of the nurses who greeted him at the entrance shared a quiet observation later: he didn't come in like someone making an appearance. He came in like someone who cared. As Barron started his rounds, the first stop was the oncology wing. This was where some of the hospital's youngest and most vulnerable patients were receiving treatment. In one room, he met Sarah, a 4-year-old with bright eyes and a head covered in a little knit cap. She had been drawing pictures to pass the time, and when Barron complimented her artwork, her face lit up. He sat down beside her, asking about her favorite colors and what she wanted to draw next. In another room, he met David, a 12-year-old who had been in the hospital for months after a major surgery. David's father, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, was clearly taken aback when Barron knelt by David's bed to ask him about his favorite books. The two quickly struck up a conversation about science fiction, and for the first time in weeks, David's father saw his son laugh. At one point, Barron paused in the hallway to thank one of the nurses for the work they were doing. It was a brief exchange, but the sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. The nurse later said, "You can tell when someone means it. He wasn't just saying the words, he understood what we go through." What made the visit even more impactful were the small, thoughtful details. Barron had brought hand-picked gifts for each child, items tailored to their interests, based on information the hospital staff had shared ahead of time. For one girl who loved animals, it was a plush puppy. For a boy who dreamed of being an astronaut, it was a model rocket. Each gift was met with wide-eyed excitement, the kind of joy that's hard to find in a place where pain and worry are so common. But the most touching moment came when Barron met Mia, a 7-year-old whose condition had left her unable to speak. Her mother, standing by her bed, explained that Mia communicated through a tablet. Barron didn't hesitate, he pulled up a chair, smiled at Mia, and began typing out questions on her tablet, waiting patiently as she responded with slow but deliberate keystrokes. By the end of their conversation, Mia was giggling softly, a sound her mother said she hadn't heard in weeks. Now, here's the part that really stays with you. Barron didn't just talk to these kids. He listened. He gave them his full attention, treating each interaction like it was the most important thing he could be doing at that moment. For families who often felt like the world had moved on from their struggles, this visit was a reminder that someone cared enough to step into their reality and share a little kindness. What do you think it means when someone takes the time to connect like that? Is it about the gifts, the gestures, or something deeper? Barron Trump's arrival at St. Hope's Children's Hospital wasn't announced with flashing lights or bustling reporters. Instead, he walked into the hospital's modest lobby with quiet confidence, a warm smile on his face, and a single staff member guiding him through. There was no entourage, no scripted introduction, just a young man who seemed genuinely eager to meet the children waiting inside. The staff had heard whispers about the visit but didn't know exactly what to expect. Some assumed he might stay for a brief handshake or a quick photo op before moving on. But as Barron stepped into the pediatric wing and began his first interactions, it became obvious this wasn't about publicity. One nurse standing near the reception desk paused, watching as Barron leaned down to greet a young boy in a wheelchair. She later described the moment, saying, "It wasn't rushed. He took his time, and you could see he really cared about what the boy was saying." Parents sitting in the hallways exchanged curious glances as Barron moved from room to room, carrying small, wrapped gifts in his hands. His demeanor was calm and focused. He didn't come across as someone simply fulfilling an obligation, there was a sincerity that caught many off guard. In one room, a father stood nervously as Barron approached his daughter, Sophie, who was recovering from surgery. Sophie was shy at first, hiding behind her blanket, but Barron gently asked about her favorite movie character. Within minutes, she was chatting animatedly about princesses, and her father's tense expression softened into a smile. Later, the father admitted, "I thought this visit might be for show, but watching how he interacted with Sophie, I could tell he meant it. It felt personal." The hospital staff began to notice something remarkable. In every interaction, Barron wasn't just polite, he was attentive. He listened intently to each child, asked thoughtful questions, and responded in ways that made them feel seen. This wasn't a hurried walkthrough, it was a series of meaningful moments strung together. Even the children who were too ill to sit up were not overlooked. Barron spent time sitting quietly beside their beds, speaking softly to parents and leaving behind small tokens of encouragement. One mother, whose son had been battling a rare illness, said, "He didn't try to say the perfect words or pretend he could fix everything. He just sat there with us, and somehow that meant more than anything." For the staff, this visit was unlike any they'd experienced. A pediatrician later remarked, "We've had visitors before, celebrities, politicians, but this was different. He wasn't here to be noticed. He was here to make the kids feel important." And it raises a question worth thinking about. In a world where so much feels superficial, what does it mean when someone takes the time to show up for no other reason than to care? Could small gestures like these remind us of the humanity we all share? The visit continued, each interaction building on the sense of genuine care Barron had brought into the hospital. In one room, a nurse guided him to the bedside of Emma, a 5-year-old girl who had been too weak to sit up for weeks. Her father, sitting quietly in the corner, looked up with tired eyes as Barron approached. Without hesitation, Barron pulled a chair close to Emma's bed and began speaking softly to her, his voice calm and steady. He asked about her favorite colors, carefully listening as her father filled in the words Emma was too tired to say. As Barron handed her a small teddy bear, her fingers curled around it, and a faint smile broke through the exhaustion. Her father later said, "It wasn't just what he gave her, it was the way he treated her, like she wasn't just a patient. He made her feel like a kid again." Meanwhile, down the hall, 10-year-old Michael, who loved soccer, had been anxiously waiting for his turn to meet Barron. Confined to a wheelchair after a rare spinal condition, Michael had struggled to find hope in recent months. When Barron finally entered his room, Michael's face lit up. They quickly fell into a lively conversation about their shared love of the sport. Michael's favorite player, he revealed, was Lionel Messi. Barron's response caught everyone off guard. "Messi's amazing," he said, "and I think you'd love this." Reaching into his bag, he pulled out a signed soccer ball, which left Michael wide-eyed and speechless. His mom, watching from the doorway, wiped away tears. That moment reminded Michael of who he is, a fighter, a dreamer. "For us, it was everything," she later said. Perhaps the most moving encounter came when Barron visited Ava, a 14-year-old who had been grappling with the emotional toll of her cancer treatment. Her mother stood by her bedside, gently encouraging Ava to talk, but she hesitated, clearly self-conscious. She had lost her hair to chemotherapy and rarely spoke to visitors anymore. Barron seemed to sense her discomfort immediately. Instead of pressuring her, he sat a few feet away and shared a story about his own childhood, how he'd been teased for being taller than everyone else's age. His humor was disarming, and soon Ava glanced up, a small smile creeping onto her face. Before leaving, Barron handed Ava a delicate bracelet he'd chosen specifically for her. She turned it over in her hand, admiring the tiny charm that sparkled in the light. Later, Ava's mom shared, "He didn't try to fix anything or make big promises. He just reminded her that she's still beautiful, still herself." That's a gift we'll always remember. The impact of Barron's visit wasn't measured by cameras or headlines, it was written on the faces of the families, the staff, and the children he met that day. Each small gesture carried a message, that even in the hardest times, kindness has the power to heal. What do you think it means to show up for others in moments like these? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep these uplifting stories alive. Small actions, when done with heart, can leave a mark that lasts forever. As Barron Trump's visit continued, the staff gathered families and children in the hospital's common room for what would become the most unforgettable moment of the day. The room was filled with soft chatter as parents, kids, and nurses found their seats. For many, it was a rare chance to come together in the midst of their individual battles. There was an air of curiosity. What would Barron say to this room full of people whose lives revolved around hope and perseverance? When he stepped to the front of the room, Barron didn't carry notes or a prepared speech. Instead, he took a moment to look around, making eye contact with the parents, children, and staff. Then, he began to speak in a voice that was steady but heartfelt. "You are the bravest people I've ever met," he said, pausing for a moment to let the words settle. The room fell completely silent. He went on, "Each of you is fighting a battle I can only imagine, but what stands out to me isn't just your strength, it's your spirit. The way you keep going, the way you find reasons to smile, even on the hardest days. It's something that inspires me more than I can put into words." As he spoke, the children listened closely, their eyes fixed on him. For many of them, this was the first time someone outside their immediate world had acknowledged their fight in such a personal way. Barron didn't talk down to them, he spoke as if they were equals, people whose stories deserved to be heard and celebrated. To the parents in the room, his words carried a different kind of weight. "I can't imagine what it's like to sit by your child's side every day, wishing you could take their pain away," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "But I want you to know, you're not just parents. You're heroes. And your love, your strength, it's what keeps your kids fighting." Tears began to fall quietly across the room. A mother in the back reached for a tissue as she held her toddler close. A father, sitting near the front, nodded in quiet agreement, his hand resting on his son's shoulder. Even some of the nurses, who had seen countless visitors over the years, admitted later that they were moved in a way they hadn't expected. But it wasn't just Barron's words that left an impact, it was the sincerity behind them. He wasn't speaking out of obligation or duty. He was there because he wanted these families to know they mattered, that their stories weren't going unnoticed. He finished with a simple yet powerful message. "Your courage gives hope to so many people, including me. And I promise, I'll carry what I've seen and heard today with me, always." As he stepped back, the room erupted into applause, not the polite kind, but the kind that comes from a place of genuine gratitude. Parents wiped their eyes, children smiled, and for a moment, it felt like the weight of their struggles had lifted just a little. What do you think it means to remind people of their own strength? Is it about saying the right words, or is it about showing up and being there when it counts? Barron Trump's visit didn't end when he walked out of the hospital doors. The impact of his time there began to unfold in unexpected ways, sparking a wave of generosity and compassion throughout the community. After the visit, word began to spread about what he had done, not through flashy headlines, but through the heartfelt stories shared by the families and staff. One local toy store owner, moved by the accounts, arrived at St. Hope's with boxes of donated toys and games, saying, "I wanted to give the kids a reason to smile, just like Barron did." Other businesses soon followed. A nearby bookstore sent over dozens of books tailored to the children's ages and interests. A bakery dropped off cupcakes decorated with cheerful messages, hoping to add a little sweetness to the day. Even a local sports team got involved, offering to sponsor special activities for the kids. One moment stood out above the rest. Michael, the soccer-loving 10-year-old, had mentioned his favorite player to Barron during their conversation. Days later, Michael's family was stunned to receive a video message from that very player, encouraging him to stay strong and keep dreaming big. "We had no idea Barron shared Michael's story," his mom said. But that message, it gave him something to hold on to. It meant the world to him. The families who had spent so many sleepless nights in hospital rooms began to see glimmers of hope and connection in these acts of kindness. One parent summed it up perfectly: it wasn't just the gifts or the visit, it was the fact that someone cared enough to show up and truly listen. That made all the difference. Even the hospital staff, accustomed to the routine of caregiving, found themselves uplifted. A pediatric nurse shared, "We give everything we have to these kids every day, but to see the community step up like this? It reminded us why we do what we do." These moments raised a powerful question: how often do we take the time to notice the struggles of others, and what can we do to make their load just a little lighter? It doesn't take grand gestures or fame to make an impact. Sometimes, it's as simple as showing up and paying attention. What's your take on this story? Have you ever seen small acts of kindness create a ripple of change? As Barron Trump walked out of St. Hope's Children's Hospital that evening, the echoes of his visit lingered in every corner of the building. The children had smiles that hadn't been seen in weeks. Parents held on to moments they knew would become cherished memories. And for the staff, it was a day they would carry with them long after the shift ended. For the kids, it wasn't about who Barron was or the family he came from. It was about the way he made them feel, valued, important, and heard. In a place where days are often marked by treatments and uncertainty, his visit brought a rare sense of normalcy and joy. One nurse recalled a moment just before Barron left. He stopped by Lily's room one last time to say goodbye. She had been hugging the unicorn he'd given her all day, refusing to let it go. Kneeling down beside her bed, he smiled and said softly, "Keep fighting. You're stronger than you know." Lily didn't say much, but the way her face lit up said more than words ever could. For Michael, the boy who loved soccer, the signed jersey he received days later became a symbol of something greater. It wasn't just about the gift, his mom explained. It was about showing him that people believe in him, even when things feel impossible. The parents, often weary from endless hospital routines, found themselves reflecting on the power of simple, genuine gestures. "Sometimes, it's easy to feel invisible when you're in here for so long," one father shared. But that visit, it reminded us that we're not alone. This story leaves us with a question worth pondering: how often do we stop and truly see the people around us, their struggles, their strength, their stories? And what small steps can we take to make someone feel noticed and appreciated? Barron's visit wasn't about grand speeches or extravagant acts. It was about showing up, listening, and offering a kind word when it was needed most. And that's something we can all learn from. What's your takeaway from this story? How do moments like these remind us of the good that exists in the world? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Because even the smallest acts of kindness can create lasting change, and that's a message worth spreading. As we reflect on Barron Trump's visit to St. Hope's Children's Hospital, one thing becomes clear: kindness doesn't need a grand stage. It's in the moments when someone takes the time to listen, to share a smile, or to make someone feel seen, even when the world around them feels heavy. This story is a powerful reminder that compassion has no boundaries, whether it comes from someone in the public eye or from an everyday person. You don't need to be famous to make an impact. Sometimes, the smallest gesture, a kind word, a thoughtful act, can create a lasting difference in someone's life. Think about it: what's one thing you could do today to bring a little light into someone else's world? We'd love to hear from you. What's one act of kindness you've witnessed or done that stayed with you? Share your story in the comments below. Not only does it inspire others, but it also shows how we're all connected through these moments of humanity. If this story moved you, we have more inspiring content to share. Check out our video on incredible acts of kindness that prove the power of compassion. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep these uplifting stories alive. Together, let's keep spreading hope, one act of kindness at a time.